So before we hit record, I was looking at my Moe's app, and I told Matt I just realized that every 1 point that you earn through the app, it's $1. Matt, guess how much I spent at Moe's Southwest Grill, judging by my app.
What's the timeline? Like since the beginning,
All
since
time.
you've been going to Moe's? Oh man.
All time.
I'm gonna go ooh, this is tough. I'm gonna say like 800. Oh no.
I've
What?
spent about... And so this is obviously like a wide range. So I've spent from 6,000.
Oh my gosh. 6 2. What the hell? Did you have like 2 weeks where you went for breakfast, lunch, and dinner?
To about I'm just doing the math here. $499,999 worth of Moe's
Oh my
Southwest Grill.
gosh. That is insane. You're a madman. I have 40 points. 40. And I just used it the other day.
Well, I mean, it's on the I level detail, so I'm on level 3 right now, which is a rock idol.
Oh
So
my
it's between
gosh.
how many points you earned, and it's 6,000 to 499,999 points.
That is insane.
I've spent
Good thing they do follow you. That's probably why they follow you.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
this guy has like 6,000 points.
I've spent almost over $6,000. I'll just put it that way. Oh my
That's
God,
nuts.
$6,000 at
That's
Moe's?
nuts, dude. That is insane. That's more than I made in all of high school.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Funny Business Podcast. Yes, it is my turn to lead things off in this wonderful episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully, all of you are doing well and staying safe. I am one of your co-hosts, Mike Gambita, and of course, I am in charge of the entertainment topics for today. But of course, we do have our sports topics, and I can't do it without the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Tommy Pickles. Matt Summers, thank you so much for joining us again.
That's too kind of an introduction for me. But yeah, another week in quarantine. There's got to be a light at the end of this tunnel somewhere.
I mean, I just found out that I've at least spent $6,000 on Moe's, which is not
Not during quarantine.
no,
Like,
no,
over his life.
no. That'd be
That would be.
ridiculous.
Could you imagine? Oh my gosh.
I think
That'd be insane.
I have about like a couple gift cards coming along the way, so I think at least it's not all my money. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
I think
yeah.
that sounds about right.
It's still a lot. Well, I mean, if you think about it, you could go back and look at your history on spending on anything, and it's going to seem like a lot.
Yeah.
But in reality, if it's worth it, it's worth it. If it's not, it's not. And Moe's is always going to be worth
I mean,
it.
Moe's is seriously going to be worth it during this
Yeah.
time. But anyways, Matt, we're going to be jumping into our entertainment segments for today. We have some very much unprecedented topics for today. Unlike this week, we learned that Joe Rogan is now officially going to Spotify. We're throwing in some of our own unprecedented actions today in our podcast. We are actually bringing in a guest for our entertainment topics for today, so make sure you stick around for that. And of course, Matt is combining two of his topics today because it is talking about the Last Dance documentary. So hopefully you guys will enjoy this episode for today. But Matt, speaking of restaurants, speaking of Moe's, not Moe's specifically, there's some things that are going around restaurants and sports arenas that are kind of making people turn heads a little bit.
It's definitely something that I can't believe we're at this point, but we are unfortunately at this point.
Yes. So Matt sent me a link, and it kind of tied in well with the entertainment topics for today. We're in South Korea. I think we're in South Korea as far as where this story is coming from. This was obviously reported by Bleacher Report, and we found out that FC Seoul, which is obviously the capital of South Korea, I believe. Matt, is my geography correct?
I'm gonna go with yeah. That sounds about right.
They were using sex dolls as an alternative to live fans during one of their, I'll say football, during one of their football games. And yeah, it's
They're terrifying.
it's a little weird.
It's it's bizarre. Like, I understand, like, you want to maybe give the appearance of there's fans there. Maybe it helps the players a little bit. But you can definitely tell by looking at them, like, just, they're sex dolls.
Yeah. I mean,
It's a little uncomfortable for me to look at. I'm not going to lie.
I mean, you couldn't go with, I look back. I know we were talking about some sports video games going back as far as the topics as far as our sports video games, and they used to have like the renderings of like the I don't want to say they're like the cardboard cutouts, but that's what I'm looking at as far as like the cardboard cutouts.
But the thing that freaks me out is, like, they dressed them up. Well, obviously they had to dress them up, but like they made them. That sounded weird. All right, that was. I take that back. The way they dressed them up, was very bizarre. They're wearing masks. That I think is what threw me off the most, is that they're wearing masks.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they weren't being used for their intended purpose. I mean, they're sex dolls, but obviously FCC all came out with a statement as far as apologizing to the fans. The statement read, "We are very sorry about the supporting mannequins." Oh, you actually used the term mannequins instead of sex dolls.
Well, that isn't a mannequin. I can tell you that for sure.
That were placed during the game on May 17th. These mannequins may have been made to look and feel like real humans, but they are not for sexual use, as confirmed by the manufacturer from the beginning.
Sorry to cut you off. Here's my problem with that quote. It says they feel like real humans, but yet we're supposed to act like they aren't used for other things. I'm not buying that at all.
Yeah, I'm not either myself, but continuing on, with the intended statement, our intention was to do something lighthearted in these difficult times. We will think hard about what we will need to ensure what something like this never happens again.
This is the point in quarantine where we have to be like, how much longer can we do this?
Yeah, I mean,
because if we're gonna have to resolve to putting sex dolls in the stands, I mean, they couldn't get regular mannequins. Like, there has to be mannequins. You can buy like a mannequin somewhere, like an actual mannequin. You can put like a jersey on them and stuff like that. This was horrifying to look at. Horrifying.
I mean, Matt, you're glad that they were dressed at least.
I am, yes.
I just think sports are looking for a way to, the big word that is coming around as far as like offices and organizations is finding a way for some type of normalcy or some type of normality to kind of bring back said ideas. But let's look at this. Look at it this way: WWE is still running. There's no mannequins or sex dolls in their audience. Like, it is empty. And like, yeah, it's weird, but I think there's at least somewhat of a point that, yes, let's focus on the actual entertainment of the show rather than trying to fill the show up with any of these abnormal additions to said product.
Yeah, it's definitely weird watching like WWE and even UFC without fans. But just because you have like plastic fans in the stands, it's not going to be like it's not going to make a difference. Like, they're just like, who cares? Like, it's not like they're going to produce noise and it's going to sound like people are cheering.
Yeah,
like it's pointless to have them in the stands. Now, I saw there was, I believe the NFL said they might be, if they can't have fans, they're going to blast like fake fan sounds into the arenas to try to make it seem like the players can have a little bit more normalcy. Now, I don't know if we're going to hear that in the broadcast or not, but I don't know. It all just seems weird to me.
I think that's it kind of brings me to one of my arguments here is, what is the reasons why you're bringing sports to, I guess, our television stations? It's because we need it during this time. Why are you trying to go above and beyond and trying to expand the experience when everybody wants to watch is their favorite team go up against another team in their sport that they love to watch?
Yeah, I just want a ball or something that I can watch going back and forth on my screen. That's all I want. I don't care if there's no fans. I don't even care if there's no announcers. Like, if you can't have announcers at the stadium, just put it on TV so I can watch it. That's all we want.
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly agree with you, Matt, as far as what the actions that we need and the wants. But I found a similar story, Matt, and I wanted to take on this because there's also, obviously this is overseas that's happening. But there was actually a South Carolina restaurant that an NBC affiliate reported that is using dolls to basically occupy tables, empty tables, to establish social distancing guidelines. Again, this is in South Carolina. They're using dolls to establish social distancing guidelines.
This is also weird to me. Like I actually saw this. Like people, they did a poll like around like my area, and they said people would be more comfortable if they had like fake dolls sitting in the restaurant than if they would sitting in a restaurant and have someone be like 6 tables away. Why? Who cares? That's weird. You're just gonna have dolls like staring at you. I'm gonna be looking at the doll the whole time. Like, what's up? Like, you got a staring problem, bud? Like, are we about to throw down right now? Like, who cares if there's fake people in there? As long as you can go to a restaurant and eat, do it.
I think my favorite part of the video package that was presented was Rob McCarter, who is a customer at, again, the restaurant name, I probably should have mentioned it, was the Open Hearth restaurant. His quote was saying, "I might kiss one of those dolls before the night is over."
That's like the perfect quote for this kind of story too. Like, you couldn't pick a more absurd quote to put in this article. Like, who would say that to someone in the news? Like, they're going to post that. And now this guy's probably got like red flags all over the place.
Yeah, it's a little obnoxious, but to kind of keeping the restaurant, Open Hearth restaurant, wanted to find more of an appeal rather than just caution tape. So, of course, they purchased about 10 dolls, averaging a total of about $140. Not 100% sure if they're going to keep expanding on their doll purchasing. But, Matt, I looked around the restaurant. It's very booth-style setting. My initial thought was, why don't you just take the chairs away? But it's in the booth setting, so I can kind of see why they immediately thought, oh, let's just put dolls. But I also think, too, that having some type of, like, I don't know, cover, like, it's almost kind of like those high chairs, like having, not those high chairs, but those, they're like toddler risers, I think they're called. Like, literally, it's like a block that you could set your child on top, and they're just a little bit higher so they can actually reach for the table. I would rather see that with a sign saying, please refrain from sitting here, rather than a dressed up doll, because number one, somebody went through and tried to dress the doll. Number two, somebody tried to make it appealing. And number three, somebody physically went out and placed the doll at the dinner table. I'm not a big fan of that, and that makes me a little bit more uncomfortable than the fact of, oh, let's just put caution tape over these tables so nobody sit at them.
I just don't understand, like, well, first of all, $140 for 10 dolls. I don't know about you, but that seems like a lot to me.
It's $14 a doll.
Still, like, if are they like, is it like a blow up doll?
It looks. I mean, from the video that we saw, we may want to link this on our social media page, but they look as though they're blow up dolls themselves, but it's a little freaky because it also looks like they also have a face mask that's on top of that. I'm curious to see if it is also a sex doll that they were using.
Well, my other thought is if they're using a mask on a plastic doll, like, that's a waste of a mask.
Well, like it was like a physical like mask that literally looks like a person's face.
I thought you meant like a mask that someone...
No.
Okay, because I was going to say that would be insane. But my other thought was, if they're going to have these plastic dolls, are they going to have plastic food in front of them?
Yeah, I mean...
Because that would actually be pretty cool. And then, like, once in a while, like 20 minutes later, the waitress comes over and takes food off the plate, or like takes it to the back to like clean off the plate. That would actually be
anything
funny.
else that I can get you for today, sir?
Any dessert? Would you like to see the dessert menu?
Are we splitting it? Are we splitting it separate checks, all one check?
Cash or credit?
Cash or credit? I am just a person of a proponent to literally kiss it. And Matt, I don't know if you ever heard the term kiss it before, but it's literally keep it simple, stupid. I get the whole point of caution tape, and I get the whole point of what FCCL did. Again, I think really look at the main picture. What are you trying to accomplish? The restaurant, you obviously want customers. You obviously want to make a profit by making them food. Soccer, you obviously want your fans to be watching. I mean, who even looks in the stands anyway? Like, that's my bigger question.
Unless they like show like a fan that's got like, chest paint or something, someone that's actually worth like looking at, and they show it on the broadcast. No one looks in the stands.
No one looks at the stands at all. So
yeah, all of these stories taught me is that we need to get out of quarantine.
yes, all these stories
Big time.
We need to get out of quarantine, and Matt and I actually need to do a podcast face to face rather than trying to do it over a video chat call.
That's a fact.
Oh gosh. Moving on to the next entertainment topic for today. It is very unprecedented, ladies and gentlemen. We're bringing out all the stops for this episode. We are bringing on our very first guest of the Funny Business Podcast, and I'm really excited for you all to listen on how awful this person's vocabulary is. But as you all know, she's probably one of my best friends. Ladies and gentlemen of the Funny Business Podcast, please give it up to Miss Emily Wenzel for joining us. Emily, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Now, Emily, I know we kind of discussed, so this is Matt's first time of ever listening to you. It makes you sound like you have like a direct like vocabulary issue of like saying every sentence, but there's just a very few pieces of vocabulary that I've caught on to you, and I'm like, wait, what did you say? So I really want to take this opportunity, A, get Matt's reaction, and B, kind of go in some detail as far as some of the things you would say other than our original choice, I guess, let's put it this way. So the one thing to make fun of you about, and I think we can go into it as far as possible, the way that this is brought up, Matt, is that Emily, when it comes time for your 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock meal, she calls it supper, not dinner.
So I actually know people that do call it supper. That's not. I don't think that one's too far out there. I actually have some close friends that like do refer to it as supper and not dinner.
All right. So Emily,
so hot.
Matt, shut up. Let's make our guests feel very welcomed, Matt. But Emily, I'm gonna leave it up to you because I know you have a few pieces of vocabulary that you put down. Go ahead and tell me some things that you say. As far as I'll go with your area, because I think that's like the best way to describe it, is literally your area only says this stuff. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's pretty much like a Berks County thing. Like I hear it somewhere around like Lancaster County. People call it like Amish country, but I hear it a lot, especially Berks County area.
I'm very excited.
All right. So the thing that people refer to where the water comes out at the sink, people would refer to it as a faucet, right? Well, back home, that's known as a spigot.
Spigot. Okay, I have heard of a spigot before, but I didn't know exactly what it was. So I'm actually, yeah.
That's what we refer to it as.
Interesting. I always wondered what a spigot was, so now I know. See, you learn something new every day.
It's still weird.
You find everything I say weird.
I don't think that's that weird. I've heard a lot of people say spigot.
I have a shopping cart. When you go to the grocery store, we call it a buggy. I feel like that's a Southern thing, but it's also a Berks County thing.
Yeah, when I hear buggy, I think of like a horse and buggy.
Yeah, people get that a lot, but no, we like when we go to the store, like my mom will be like, "All right, put your stuff in the buggy, like let's go."
I think there was a what was it? A TikTok that was Never Have I Ever Pennsylvania edition, and it was like never have I ever wait. Or is it? Wow, I'm like screwing it up. It's like I
Never have I ever passed a horse and buggy.
Yes, and then they like put it down. It's like you have, and I'm like, oh, crap! I did that 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. You come to Berks County.
I do. But I'm excited to hear some more because you definitely don't. When you're back on campus, as far as your college, your university, you don't bring up a lot of things that you say back at home. So I'm kind of curious to hear those.
Yeah, that's because a lot of people just like don't understand it. So I just don't even bother saying it. Terms that we would say, such as make out the light. What would you think that would be?
Wait, make out the light?
Make out the light.
Make out the light.
I mean, Emily, we were just talking about sex dolls before, so it was.
I honestly, is that like make out the light? Is that like turning off the light?
Yeah.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. People back home will say make out the light when they want you to turn out the light.
So it's like kind of smothering it. Like when you make out with somebody, like you're kind of just like smothering them. Like Do you guys use candles? Do you guys use candles in Berks County? Like, is that why, like, make out the light? Like, you want to, like, put out the
I
wick?
mean, like, I don't know. I have electricity.
I was
in
gonna
my
say, did
house.
you just ask if she had electricity or not in the year 2020?
Mike knows this one actually. I gave him this actually this year. It's a actual holiday that we celebrate. It happens on Fat Tuesday, right before Ash Wednesday every year. We call it Fosnot Day.
I love Fosnacht Day.
Okay, so you know what a Fosnot is.
Absolutely.
Mike did not know, so I had to like let him try one.
You never had a Fosnacht before this year?
No, me being in the NEPA area, Matt.
What is wrong with you? I love Fosnacht Day.
Millie did a fantastic job, and I was like, I'm so sorry I made fun of you. It's still weird.
Now,
Yeah,
you
my
guys.
family like home makes them and everything.
So, do you guys only make like the plain Fosnacht, or do you do like different versions? Because like I've had some that have like a cream in the middle.
Yeah, we just do the OG
Do the
simple
OG.
version.
I know that's how most people usually do it.
Yeah, I don't really like them any other way. I like them the plain. We put like powdered sugar on the top, so
That's fair. That's a
So it's kind of like when you did, I forget what, it's like Polish families, they do, I forget, they don't do, is it like pierogies? Like the Polish?
oh yeah, pierogies.
Yeah, so is it kind of like you guys, like with making them all, like you kind of just like get in the kitchen, the aprons are on, you're kind of just making like
Yeah.
a whole bunch?
Like that's like a thing. Like the weekend usually before Fat Tuesday, everybody's like home. Like I usually come home and I'm like making Fosnats with my family. Like a bunch of other families do it in Berks County. Like that's a huge thing back home.
Interesting.
Now, how different is making a Fosnacht from making like a regular donut, or is it kind of similar?
Great question.
It's
Thank you.
kind of similar. I mean, I've never made an actual donut, but like I've seen them be made before. I think a Fosnat like takes a lot more time and it's like, I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain. It's a lot simpler with the ingredients, but it takes a lot of time because you have to like let them rise and like it's a very like timely process.
It is. I've actually seen people make them. It's quite fascinating to watch.
All right. So another one that I have, a lot of things that we say are like, everything is one word. So everything is put right together. So a term is did you eat yet? Being like, did you eat yet? But it's spelled DJEETYET, all one word.
See, what's funny is I'm actually not going to make fun of you about that because back in northeastern Pennsylvania, there's Hennebonics, and it's that terminology where you're combining all the words, but the
That's
response, so you said Jeet yet, my response would be, no, Jew.
Yeah, that's huge back here. Everybody like blends all their words together, and like when you listen to like somebody who really like speaks old Pennsylvania Dutch, you have to listen to them and really break apart the words, or else you're not gonna have any idea what they're saying.
Matt, you look absolutely fascinated by how
So-
I replied back.
Well, I'm just fascinated by the fact like you guys actually know how to spell that.
Yeah,
That's insane. That's crazy.
I told you it's like a different language.
Wow.
Do you know what Scrapple is?
Scrapple?
I do know what Scrapple is. My dad's eaten Scrapple a lot.
Mike, I feel like Matt knows more about this than you do.
See, my mind went a different place because I thought you said Scrabble, like the game.
Scrapple.
Scrapple, like with P's, not B's.
Peas, yeah, peas.
Yeah,
I've never had it.
It's just a breakfast meat. I don't know. It's like all the parts of a pig just like mushed into one meat.
Yeah, I've never had it myself. I've never had like the courage to try it because like it doesn't look the best to me. But like my dad
Yeah.
absolutely loves it.
So
Yeah,
Matt,
my dad loves it.
Matt, that's like basically not saying you don't like McDonald's chicken nuggets.
No, I said I don't like. Well, I'm not a big fan of McDonald's chicken nuggets. If we're gonna throw that out there.
Wow.
So listen, I already dissed their fries like 30 episodes ago.
You did this
Yeah.
their fries. Emily, really quick, name your top. I know this is really putting you on the spot, but name your top 5 chain restaurants
All right.
in no particular.
Chick-fil-A.
Okay,
What?
in no particular order.
Okay. Chick-fil-A.
Okay.
McDonald's is up there in my top 5.
Okay.
Taco Bell is definitely up there.
Yes, it's a big one.
I feel like Wendy's has got to be in there too because like you got to go for the 4 for $4. But then like I don't know. I feel like McDonald's, I do like their chicken nuggets.
You
What
got
do I
one
need?
more.
One more. I feel like I don't know. Friendlies would probably be up there too because it's like you get it all and then the dessert on top of it too. So
Yeah, I used to love going to Friendly as a kid.
Yeah, me too.
Go to Friendlies. Is there any other words or phrases that you bring out in your Pennsylvania Dutch or your hometown that I feel like I would make fun of you for?
oh, this is one that you would definitely make fun of me for. So the different types of eggs. One may know them as over easy, over medium, over hard. That is not it in Berks County. There's two types of eggs and two types of eggs only. Dippy eggs and scrambled eggs. There's no over easy, over hard at a restaurant or anything. You go in and you order them dippy or scrambled.
I'm actually not going to make fun of you about that because I've heard both ways and I can understand why dippy egg is a dippy egg. So
Yeah, I actually went to order a dippy egg once at like a restaurant by me, and they didn't know what it was. Like I had to say over easy. So
Yeah, a lot of my friends like had no idea. Like a lot of my friends at school are from out of state, and they had no idea what it was the first time I told them. I was like, what are you calling it an over easy? I was like, no, that's not it. It's a dippy egg.
exactly, because then you got to dip the bread in the yolk.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you move around a lot and you're like scooching around, I don't know like what a term would be for that, but like we call it rutching around. I don't know if that's like common for
Spell
people
that?
to say. Rutching, like RUTSCH, like rutching around. I don't know if that's like a common thing to say, but that's used a lot back home.
I've never
that.
heard of anything like that. I'm trying to think what a term would be like for that. It's just like squirming, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's
I
interesting.
haven't heard a lot of people use it at school up in like NEPA area. But also I've never heard any of these words used up in that area.
Yeah. All right, Millie, do you have one or two more maybe? Because we got to ask you the big question as far as why do you think there's such a distinct difference between these two. But I'll let you finish with the final two that you got, or one.
All right, I have one more. Okay. So you call it a creek, like a little river. When you go fishing, we call it a crick. I know people may have heard them interchange, but like it's just a crick back home. Like a creek isn't a thing, just a crick.
I say crick, and I've had so many arguments with people up at Miz or down like by my high school about if it's creek or crick.
Yeah, it's in the crick.
It's in the crick. I've heard of it before, so honestly, I think I feel like I can finally just come up with a statement that I just make fun of you just because. But those ones were pretty. I felt like it was very enlightening, especially knowing that Hennebonics is not only located in northeastern Pennsylvania, but also down in the southeast, I guess is the best way to explain it. So the southeast. But Millie, we have one final question. Why do you think there's such a distinct difference? And I hope you had some time to think about it. Why do you think there's a distinct difference between the language that you guys speak versus everybody else in PA? Let's just put it that way.
I honestly think it has something to do with like the generations because like especially in Berks County, like you can see like the newer generations or like my generations go like way back. Like I have like ancestors from born and raised in Berks County, and like they just kept like producing down the line. So like me eventually, but I just think it has to do with the generations because if you come to Berks County, you definitely don't understand any of these terms. And then like if I would go somewhere else, like they won't understand what I'm saying either. So I think it definitely has something to do with the generations and how everything is passed down and where things are brought about too.
Now, did you have was there like a culture shock when you first went with the Miz and like you kind of like used some terms, and did people give you like funny looks in the beginning?
Yeah, Mike all the time.
Well, he's just a jerk. But
No,
wow,
like
okay,
I said,
everyone.
like I said, like a lot of my friends being from out of state, I would say all these terms and they would be like, what are you talking about? Like, what is that? So I'd have to explain like what it would be, like how I did, like what it would be to them rather than what it would be to me so that they would understand what I'm saying.
no, that's funny. No, I was actually surprised. I knew most of them, so it was a fun time.
Yeah.
Thought it was great. Millie, any final words or thoughts? Doesn't necessarily have to be Berks County related, but any final thoughts or wishes or comments to give to the Funny Business audience that have grown in love all of our quirkiness and glad you get to be a part of our quirkiness as well.
I don't think so. Just thanks for having me. Hope everyone's staying safe during this, and I hope that it could bring you a smile. Hopefully you learned something new from my Berks County self.
If you have any questions at all, you can reach out to Millie at. No, I'm just kidding. but we didn't force you into being a part of the show, correct?
No.
Yeah. So if you're interested and you have some type of fun and unique thing, talent, anything you want to talk about, we are now opening it up, the floor, to all the guests that want to be a part of the Funny Business Podcast. And of course, we couldn't think of anyone else to go with than besides Miss Emily Wenzel. So when we come back, Matt is going to be taking on the sports topic, specifically the Last Dance documentary. Don't go anywhere.
Okay, so moving into the sports topics for today, we're going to do things a little differently today. So this past weekend, the Last Dance documentary on ESPN, which focused on Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls, concluded. So it was a 10-part documentary series. So we're going to pick through our favorite parts, maybe the most important parts of the documentary, and run through it on today's podcast. So, Mike, I wanted to start today with obviously the man, the myth, the legend, who was what inspired this documentary. It is Michael Jordan. One of the earliest things that I noticed during this documentary is I don't mean this have this be a jab at Michael Jordan, but he was so lucky with the coaches that he had in his life. So if we look at, obviously he played under Phil Jackson, who's probably maybe the best coach in NBA history with 11 total titles. Really, when he got hired, the Bulls kind of really started getting things going into motion. But other than Phil Jackson, he played under Dean Smith at UNC in North Carolina. Now, Dean Smith is probably one of the best college coaches of all time. And a player like MJ, again, this doesn't mean to diminish his career at any point, but I think it should be noted he did have a little bit of luck with the coaches that he had.
Yeah, man, I'm going to have to somewhat agree with you. I definitely believe that a good coach leads to a good team, which leads to wins and championships. But, I think what you saw in the documentary, and I guess to give everybody a little perspective, it wasn't just focused on Michael Jordan, but obviously since Michael Jordan was the god of basketball, of course everybody had at least a little piece of MJ when they were discussing or being interviewed during the time there. I mean, they were interviewing people from President Barack Obama. They were interviewing people from his mother to celebrities and everything like that. There at least was something that was included. But I think with Phil Jackson, allowed Michael Jordan to build into being a team player. You look at other players and individuals and again, no jabs whatsoever. I think I could side with you on that. This is certainly not a jab at Michael Jordan. But you look at players like Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen. I literally just rattled off all the Celtics. Dwayne Wade, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant. Those are all good players. But I don't think, besides Kobe with Phil Jackson, that's obviously a true winner. When LeBron James won the 2016 NBA Finals, Tyronn Lue was the coach. And I am not a firm believer that Tyronn Lue was the person that led them to become the best Cavaliers team ever. I mean, we were looking at the documentary itself. Cavaliers team was a force to be reckoned with back in the 1990s as far as that. But I think to agree with you, he was very blessed with the opportunity of having been coached by some great coaches like Dean Smith and Phil Jackson. But I don't think it brings down the fact that Michael Jordan is still the best basketball player of all time. And I know, just to lay it out there, and I think, Matt, I may ask you the same thing, if I had to choose between LeBron James and Michael Jordan being the best basketball player of all time, I have to go with Michael Jordan.
I would too. I think you're right. I think it did give him the opportunity to learn into a team player because Phil Jackson brought in the triangle offense, which is probably the most famous offense and the most productive and successful offense ever run. But I think it definitely helped his career in a big way. I mean, who knows if he would have been the same player if he would have went to any other college or if he got drafted by any other team. But I've seen some people say that, oh, he played with Phil Jackson and he wouldn't have won anything without Phil. I don't think that's true. I think maybe he wouldn't have won 6 without Phil, but he would have won multiple championships regardless who his coach was.
I think all the haters are just trying to find something to at least kind of bring down Jordan as far as, I mean, yeah, the fact that he did have great coaches, but at the same time, he still was a very good basketball player, and I think that's certainly something to be reckoned with.
Yeah, it's definitely something you can't take away anything from the guy. Moving along in his career, I wanted to touch on his battles with the Bad Boy Pistons. So the Detroit Pistons were one of the most popular and successful teams in the 80s and 90s.
And you can't forget physical.
Oh my gosh, it was so awesome watching this documentary, looking at old highlights, and just I wish I could be alive to watch 80s, 90s basketball, because I just feel like that was the peak of basketball, and we're never gonna have anything like that again. But it was funny to see like the Bad Boy Pistons was pretty much like the only team that had Michael Jordan's number in the early part of his career. Now, obviously, the year they won the first title, they did beat them in the conference finals, but he got knocked out. I think it was 3 years in a row by the Pistons, either in the semifinals or the Eastern Conference Finals. And we've never really seen anyone do this to him but the Bad Boy Pistons. And I know there's the famous Jordan rules that they had for Michael Jordan, where basically if he went up, he wasn't getting back down softly. And it's kind of interesting that no other team kind of was able to do this with him but them.
Yeah, I mean, you had a plethora of players that were willing to lay it all on the line, and I don't mean give the 100% effort. Like, they would literally body you up as far as playing against you. I know I'm flash forwarding a little bit farther as where the Bulls actually beat the Pistons. I think it was Rodman. Sorry, I was drawing a blank, but Dennis Rodman actually fouled Scottie Pippen. Scottie went up for a layup and Rodman pushed him and could have physically seriously injured Scottie Pippen, but for him to literally just sit there and not be touched, not be it took them 2 to 3 years as far as them trying to move into that transition of being I don't care if these guys hit me. They're still not a better team. They're very physical, but they're not the best team in the league. And that's when the Bulls, I think, proved. I mean, that was the moment that they said, the moment Scottie got up, didn't say a word, didn't jab at anybody, didn't look at anybody differently. That's when you knew it was oh crap. Here come the Bulls.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to see how the Pistons, Bad Boy Pistons, actually kind of helped Jordan's career in a way too, because he realized if he was going to beat them, he had to gain muscle. So I think it was after the last time they beat him in the playoffs that the Pistons beat the Bulls in the playoffs. Michael Jordan started working out like crazy. The whole team, they started working out together as a team. So I think that was the point in MJ's career that he realized, yes, he is the best player in the game, but it's a team game, and he can't beat one team by himself.
Agreed.
And we're going to talk about Scottie Pippen and Dennis Rodman a little bit later in this, but I want to focus on MJ for now. Let's fast forward a little bit to his first retirement. So
first retirement.
Yes.
I love that.
sounds like we're talking about Brett Favre, but it is Michael Jordan. So obviously, his father's death and his gambling situation is kind of where I'm going for next. So obviously, MJ liked to gamble. Maybe he didn't have a gambling problem if you talk to him, but if you talk to a lot of other people, they would probably say he had a gambling problem. And at the time of his father's death, there was a lot of news articles and reports coming out, which was BS, because no one ever did any real reporting on it, that it was related to Jordan's gambling. And I just thought that was I just can't imagine what was going on through his head, that he has to cope with his father's death while he's trying to contemplate if he wants to play basketball, baseball, whatever. And, people are leaking stories in the news that, it was related to his gambling. Yes, he liked to gamble. Did he gamble a little too much? Maybe. That's up for you to decide. He didn't think he did.
Yeah.
But it was total BS that people tried to connect the two and made it seem like it was Jordan's fault for his father's death.
Yeah, I'm never really vulgar on this podcast, but I can agree with you, Matt. It was total bullshit as far as them trying to connect the fact that Jordan's gambling activities were in correlation to the death of his father. To give everybody a little bit of backstory, Michael Jordan's father was actually shot and killed while driving from, I guess, a visit from his family, and was driving back and wanted to take a nap on the side of the road, and people got in and shot him in the chest. I never knew that, and that was a huge surprise. I thought he died of natural causes, but that story heightened a little bit more. But it annoyed me because, and I think there's a really good, and Matt, I know you and I try to stay away from politics, but I think this really brings in the fact of journalistic integrity, of the fact that they were trying to spin a story that didn't exist. I mean, legitimately, like, you look at anybody that is of at least some type of celebrity caliber, you're not seeing them in public. You're not seeing the Kanye West, the Kim Kardashians. You're not seeing the LeBron Jameses just taking a stroll or taking a drive down, Fifth Avenue or down the 309 Memorial Highway for all we know. And, you don't see that because people know better. And I think back then we didn't really need to establish it because there just wasn't a need. But, now basketball players, baseball players, football players, they do not, even their family members, like, they are not in any way, shape, or form correlated to public transportation unless they want to. But usually that celebrity status isn't that high. But really, I think the journalistic integrity was really frowned upon as far as this whole thing that his gambling activities were related to his father's death.
Yeah, it's just sad. Like, I understand he's like a big celebrity, and he was probably the most popular celebrity back in the 90s. But just because he's famous doesn't mean you have to write a story on something just to get views and stuff
clickbait,
like that.
Yeah, no, you're right about that.
Basically, clickbait in the 90s. So let's go back to him playing baseball and his leave from basketball. Do you think that he actually wanted to go? Well, I think he did want to go play baseball, but do you think he was kind of forced that way by David Stern? And was his first retirement basically a suspension for his gambling problem?
So to kind of just wrap up the question, like, you're asking me if the reason why he went to baseball is because David Stern suspended Michael Jordan, but they covered it as a retirement.
Correct. That's the big conspiracy theory that went around.
Yeah. David Stern, for those who don't know, was the commissioner of the NBA. God rest his soul. He actually passed away not too long ago.
He did.
But I think as far as the whole cover up, again, I'm going to throw fake news at that. For having your father pass away, and for somebody who's been so influential to your life, not only your personal career, but your athletic career, I think there really was a spin to the fact that, like, Jordan just needed to find something else. And Jordan was saying it himself, that the fact that, his father used to go to every game. His father used to coach him throughout his entire thing. Like, you want to get better, go ahead and practice more. I don't think he'd really be able to fathom the idea that his father wasn't going to be there anymore. And in person, physically. I mean, I know for all of us, like, when somebody passes away, they get the best seat in the house and watching us perform and do great things. But I think ultimately Jordan just needed that break. And not to compare anybody, but it's like Dennis Rodman going to Vegas for 48 hours and trying to take a break. Like, as soon as you came back, boy, you could not stop that guy. But he's not as like Rodman. But I think in turn, for him to take this break, I really don't think it was related to a cover-up based on Commissioner Stern's activities of suspending Michael.
There's no reason for David Stern to suspend Michael Jordan. One, because I don't really think he did anything illegal. Two, why would David Stern take his best player in the league and, put him away for 2 years? No sport commissioner is going to seek out punishment for their best player, the icon of the sport, just because they did something wrong. They're going to find a way to get them on the court no matter what. So it was definitely MJ's decision. Now, going to his baseball career, if there was one thing that we can look at where I think the documentary did a good job of trying to portray how Jordan could have been successful in baseball, but the one thing that kept sticking out in my mind was his numbers are very similar to Tim Tebow playing baseball, and no one thinks Tim Tebow is close to making the majors.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right, Matt. Again, you're taking somebody who's literally dedicated a life to one sport, and now you're asking them to do another sport. I think you're right about the fact of he wasn't really going to go anywhere, but, like, I think in turn too, what was he actually going to do when he left basketball? Like, I don't think for him to retire, I mean, for him, he wasn't at that point yet where it's like, you know what? I'm going to throw in the shoes in the locker. I'm going to put in the towel, and I'm just going to sit and go to the beach and go play poker all my life. Like I don't think like that was the take on that. Like Jordan was still at a very prime age, still very athletically sound, but for him to try out the sport, I really think it was more based on the fact of he just needed to stay busy. And of course, again, backing up to my original statement, the fact that his father passed away. He needed something to keep himself busy because if he's sitting there, he's obviously going to think about it.
Oh, I think he absolutely loved baseball, and I know him and his dad had a big connection to baseball. I thought it was funny how the documentary tried to portray he was getting so much better, he could have made the majors, and then they threw in a line at the end. It was like, yeah, he ended the season hitting like 240. Like 240 in the minor leagues is not going to get you anywhere. No. Also, it was fascinating how he had to go right to Double-A because they couldn't handle the media coverage if they sent him to Single-A. That was crazy.
Yeah. I mean, Matt, you have had experience with some AAA and AA and Single-A ball as far as your career, but you can't hold on to not only world newscasts like the CNNs and the Foxes and the NBCs and the ABCs, but you also have all the local channels that want to go in and take a piece of Mike. Like I thought about that, and I'm like, yep. I was like, that I can understand why they want him to Double-A because at least there's some type of security that went on there.
Yeah, and I guess if you think of it that way, starting in Double-A is not what everyone does. So I guess he did pretty decent for just getting thrown right into the fire. But I think it's BS that they tried to make it like, oh yeah, he couldn't play in the majors. Like, you move up from Double-A to AAA when you're hitting 300, not when you're hitting 240 and it's your first year in the minor leagues. So overall, it was a great documentary. So finishing up on MJ, I wanted to throw two questions back at you. Number one, do you think his competitive leadership would have worked in today's NBA? Because I think it's safe to say that the competitiveness of the league is much different from the 80s and 90s to where it is today. Like back in the 80s and 90s, they hated each other and they let you know they hated you. But now in today's NBA, they practice with each other, they train in the off season with each other. Like, do you think if MJ would have If he was playing in 2020 and he was the alpha dog of his team, do you think he would be as successful today as he was back then?
See, it's tough to call on that because I think really in reality you're looking at two different time zones. You're looking at the time when, number one, people were more focused on their diet. Like what really threw me in a loop when it came to watching the documentary was, I had a couple Miller Lights before the game, and I'm like, oh my gosh, why are you having that? Like, I mean, it's cool you're having it. Like, I'd have a couple brews with you before the game, but like, not if I was playing.
And when you're getting paid millions of dollars to play.
Oh my gosh. Like, I mean, literally, like, seeing the game, like, I mean, I love Miller Lite. Don't get me wrong. I love Miller Lite. But the fact that you literally saw the entire team just holding on a can of Miller Lite after the game, I'm like, are you stupid? Like, where's the water? But again, two different generations. What my point was about the Miller Lite was you're watching your diet. You're doing more workouts. You're doing very unique workouts. There's more so than just doing foul shots and layups. I think if Jordan came up to the point in which that was his time, I think no doubt he would be just as competitive as he was back in the 80s and 90s. Because again, things were different back then. Things are different today. And I know that is a cop-out type of answer, but as far as, and I think I feel like I can predict the next question you're going to ask me. I just feel like for him and his style of play, his attitude, and his way of encouraging his teammates and keeping the camaraderie between his teammates, I think he'd have no issue whatsoever.
I think there would be a little bit of an issue. Not necessarily with like the second or third best players on the team, but it would be with the role players because he went after some of those guys. Like Scott Burrell, poor Scott Burrell, he's just chilling at home, and he probably watched episodes like 7 through 10, and MJ just ripped him to shreds all the time. There was a story that I read that wasn't on The Last Dance that Horace Grant, if he had a bad game in Chicago, Michael Jordan would not let him eat after the game. Like, legit. They would be on the plane, and the stewardess would come over with the food. He'd be like, "Nah, don't feed him. He doesn't deserve it." Like, there's no way that would fly in the NBA right now. Like, players are a little softer than they were back in the 90s.
I was just going to say that.
I think his competitiveness would still be the same, but I don't think every single player would be lining up to play with MJ. But that's just my opinion. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Thoughts on
Like if players would want to go out of the way to play with MJ, knowing that if they don't play up to expectations, he's going to go at you.
I feel like to kind of mirror what a similar situation is, it's like playing for LeBron. It's certainly like, when LeBron does all of his trading, like Coach LeBron does all of his trading, and like he wants to get Anthony Davis on the team, he wants to get Dwayne Wade on the team. Like you're kind of getting that nod as far as like Chris went back when he played for Miami Heat, like when Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade all came together. Like it was kind of like one of those things. It's like, yeah, let's get together and play with LeBron. I think if MJ was in that same situation, I mean, again, we're not looking at him in the way of he's a rookie in this time of year. Like we're talking about prime MJ. Like, and even the scope of it, the amount of popularity, not only nationally but worldwide popularity that was going on. There was, again, no social media. There was no Twitter. There was no Facebook. There was no Instagram. There wasn't even MySpace back then. The fact that you were playing with Michael Jordan, I think topographically, like, looked cool, but going night in and night out with him every day to practice, to games, to traveling, like, I feel like there's a true sense of, like, difference. But I think all in all, like, at the end, I don't know if you want to touch upon it, like the episode 10 at the very end, what the 98 team did at their like last time meeting with each other. Like I was like, wow. I'm like, that's fantastic. Like for what they did.
That was awesome. So Phil Jackson, they had their final team meeting as the final year that they were a team after winning their 6th championship. And he had all the players write like a little note, or I think MJ even wrote a poem saying what the team meant to them. And then they all got together, read the notes read the notes aloud to each other, and then like burned them in a trash can, which is probably the most awesome way to end the run that they had. Yeah. You couldn't script it better than that. Mm-hmm. So my last question on MJ, he was nervous that he thought this documentary was going to make him look like a jerk afterwards. I don't think it did at all. I know sometimes he could be hard on his teammates, but sometimes you have to do that. I thought MJ came out looking great in this documentary. Now, that's also because he had the final say of everything that got the final cut. But I didn't think he looked as bad as he thought he was going to.
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of looking at it in the way where would you rather have somebody that would passive-aggressively tell you what's different or just straight up in your face saying what's wrong? Like, I think you and I have that, like, difference when it comes to the podcast. It's like, Matt, like, you need to do it this way better. Mike, what are you doing? Like, what are you talking about? Like, I feel like there's that sense of it was best that MJ was actually being up in everyone's face and going at it with each other as far as the individuals that were going at it. Like, I mean, he was so hard on his team, but everybody was hard back at him. And I feel like if you have that mutual respect, I feel like there's no issue whatsoever as far as him looking like a jerk. I think he did not look like a jerk because I know so many people that are jerks, not in the sense of playing, but just naturally they're a jerk. And MJ at that time was not a jerk.
No, that's just who he is, and you can't fault the guy for being competitive. If that's how he gets his competitiveness out, you got to roll with it. Mm-hmm. And if it was like a role player doing this, obviously that wouldn't fly. But it's Michael Jordan. He can pretty much do what he wants. So let's move on to some of the side stories and maybe not side characters, but some of his teammates going on. Scottie Pippen. I'm very passionate about this. Scottie Pippen, to me, is the most underrated, or maybe the better term is underappreciated player in NBA history. Because, yes, there's no Scottie without MJ, but as MJ would tell you too, there's no MJ without Scottie. And I think this really showed when MJ took his first retirement, and Scottie Pippen became like a top 10 player in the league. And people just kind of throw that to the side when talking about like the best players of all time. Like Scottie Pippen is one of the top 50 players to ever play in the NBA, and he just doesn't get the respect that he deserves.
Yeah, I think you could similarly put this together as far as the 2016 Cavaliers. Like, LeBron James just completely overshadowed Kyrie Irving, and Kyrie Irving was the individual who won their championship when they were facing off the Warriors in Game 7. But then again, you could say, well, LeBron James blocked the shot that Andre Iguodala was going up for a layup for. But, like, okay, so who got the lead? It was Kyrie. So, I mean, I kid you not. I wore 33 when I was playing in high school ball. Yeah, I got really attached and really emotional on. I mean, I'm a simple guy. Like, I could get emotional over the littlest of things, but like the fact of seeing Scottie Pippen support MJ in his flu game, or for him to just basically just check up on MJ. It's like, dude, what's wrong? Like, what can I do for you? Like, it's like, this is what a teammate's for. And
he also, sorry to cut you off, but he also went through so much. Like, he was at one point like the 130th highest paid player in the league, which is absurd for Scottie Pippen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the one part of the documentary that showed him in a bad light was when he sat out the final 2 seconds of that first playoff game, when Phil Jackson didn't draw up the final shot for him, which if you're Scotty, I would probably feel the same way. Now, I don't know if I would have sat out the game, but I would be upset if, he's pretty much the alpha male of the team. He is their version of Michael Jordan, and Phil's like, you're not going to take the last shot. After the All-Star year that he had, I would be a little upset with that too.
Well, nobody's perfect too. I mean, that's kind of like, I never knew that about Scottie Pippen sitting out at that last 5 seconds of the game. And, I think when it came to MJ, like, doing some of the, doing some of the plays, like, it wasn't always MJ getting the ball. Like, Paxton got the ball, Steve Kerr got the ball. Like, there was so many other options to work with because everybody was focused on Michael. But I think for Scotty, I can agree with you, the most underappreciated player ever as far as his salary, as far as him getting the final shot, like, I don't think anybody valued him like Michael Jordan, but I think anywhere else, if he was placed in the team, oh yeah, totally be the player, like totally would be the MJ of the Bulls. And, I think it would have been a different story written if the Pistons actually acquired him, with the bad boy Pistons acquired him. Like, could you imagine like having Scottie Pippen with those Pistons? Like, yeah, they won on their own without Scottie Pippen, but they would completely, I think, crush the Bulls if they had that opportunity.
Yeah, they would have been unstoppable. And if you don't think Scottie Pippen's underrated, just look at the last game that they played together when he had the back injury in Game 6 of the finals. And he kept trying to give it his all because he loved that team.
Yeah.
Let's move on to maybe the biggest personality, the biggest character on the Bulls team, Dennis Rodman.
What a guy.
I want to throw this at you. Is he the smartest rebounder in NBA history? So I believe it was episode 3 when they focused on him, 3 or 4. They showed a video of Rodman. He was like, if a guy shot from over here, I knew it would bounce off the rim and cover him over here. Like, it was just like 30 seconds of him describing how he learned how to position himself on the court to grab the rebound depending on where the ball was shot from. It blew my mind because we all think of Dennis Rodman as this big weirdo and this big silly guy. But that was incredible, like how smart of a rebounder he was.
Yeah, Matt. I from somebody who's played organized ball, and a very strict coach, Dennis Rodman would not have fit in our style of play. Certainly an unorthodox type of player as far as him achieving what he's done. When we used to play, 2 hands on the ball and going up for a rebound. Like, the guy would literally one arm it, bring it down, and then pass it with one arm. And I was like, oh my goodness, like, coach would have made us do sprints the next day if we had somebody doing that. But as far as like the way of play and how he read the ball, I think going for a rebound, 70% of it, I'm going to even raise that a little bit more. 70% about it is knowing where the ball's going to go. And like, for him to realize in situations like in chess, being 2 plays ahead of the individual, like, I think he had that edge, which then gave him the smartest, most effective rebounder. And I think in NBA history, I mean, you look at guys that have rebounding records and all that, like, they had height and they had some type of knowledge as far as going up for a rebound. But Dennis Rodman wasn't really necessarily the guy, the tall guy. He wasn't the 7-foot freak, or he was, the buff Dennis Rodman. I mean, the guy had muscle on him, but certainly didn't bring forth like any sense of an advantage. Like, he was totally level with some of the players, but for him to have that sense of smart play, I think it really has given him a chance to become, and I don't want to give it to him because there's probably going to be people up and coming that are going to even be better rebounders, but he really is in contention of being the best and smartest rebounder in NBA history.
It was fascinating to watch that story. Like, my jaw just dropped because it's like, who knew Dennis Rodman could do this? Also, he didn't start playing basketball until he went to like junior college, and he got drafted in the second round. It was an awesome story. Other than the fact that, middle of the season, he's like, yeah, I need a break. Like, that was wild. That whole story when he was like, goes to Phil Jackson, he's like, I just need to go to Vegas. Like, if that would happen today, could you imagine if this was going on, if the Bulls went on during Twitter? Like, Twitter would have died like every month. There was something new that they'd be burning up about, and half of it would be Dennis Rodman. He's too funny. Man. I want to talk on one more point before we get to take it. It's the 96 NBA Finals, and I want to talk about George Karl and Gary Payton. George Karl may be one of the stupidest coaches, maybe did the most stupidest coaching move in NBA history. So there's the Supersonics and the Bulls in the 1996 Finals. Gary Payton was the point guard for the Supersonics, reigning Defensive Player of the Year, and George Karl decided not to put him on Michael Jordan until they were down 3-0. How do you do that? And to make things worse, they won the next two games. Could you imagine if Gary Payton was guarding Michael Jordan from game one? They could have had a real shot to win that series.
I think for us, Matt, when we're looking at this time frame, I don't think defense was of essence. I don't want to say it was a necessity, but it certainly is not focused like it is today. Like, you literally can play. If you can't play defense, don't even think of joining the team. Like, I think back then it was more a little lackadaisical as far as the sense of importance on defense. But I mean, you got to give your best guy. Like, it's almost 3 seconds left. Who are you gonna shoot? Who's gonna shoot the ball? Of course, it's gonna be Michael Jordan because he knows how to shoot. Okay, your best defensive player. Who's going to guard Jordan? Because we need to stop him. Why did it not go to him? Like, I was like, this guy's stupid. Like,
I mean, he's one of the best defenders in like NBA history, and you don't put him on him until game 4 when he still didn't want to put him on. And then Gary Payton's like, no, screw you. I'm going to guard Michael Jordan. And they won the next 2 games. Like, history could have been totally different if they just put Gary Payton on Michael Jordan. Would it have been? Maybe not.
Yeah.
But I think it would have made a big difference. I think there's a good chance the Sonics win that series if Gary Payton is on Michael Jordan. And Gary Payton was in the documentary. He was still pissed about it to this day. And I mean, he's one of the biggest smack talkers of all time. And that scene of Michael Jordan watching his interview on the iPad and Jordan just cracking up, that was maybe my favorite part of the documentary.
It's becoming a meme now, I think, right?
Yes.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. That was great production by the director. Just having MJ watch on the iPad was so awesome. Mm-hmm. But that's enough analysis on that. Let's move on to our Take It segment, which is going to be kind of related to the MJ documentary. So for Take It this week, I wanted to throw this at you, Mike. If you were an NBA player right now, who would you rather play with? Michael Jordan or LeBron James? So he kind of touched on it a little bit, but I want to hear, because I know we're both big LeBron fans, but we also, after this documentary, we're big MJ fans too. So who would you rather play with if you were in the league?
I would have to go with, I don't think it's any question, it's Michael Jordan.
Okay.
For him, okay, so let me ask you this, Matt, on Take It today. Are both of them in 2020 in their prime?
Yeah, in their prime. Absolutely, in their prime.
So, like, 2020, LeBron James is in his prime, Michael Jordan's in his prime.
Yep.
I feel like, as far as Michael Jordan, LeBron James is a great player. You said it best, Matt. We're both big LeBron James fans. We're both... I mean, I would hope you're a Michael Jordan fan yourself. But I don't know. By the way you said that Take It segment, I was kind of like, is he really a Michael Jordan fan? But anyway, I digress. just the fact of, and I was actually talking about this to Jenna a little bit when I was telling her I'm binge watching the Last Dance documentary, so we could talk about it in our podcast this week. So sorry if I wasn't texting you back, Jenna. Just the fact that, okay, Jenna doesn't know much about basketball, but for her to know who Michael Jordan is, like, not know a lick about basketball, like the rules, the teams, but like, yeah, I know who Michael Jordan is. I don't think you can have that type of popularity in comparison to LeBron James. And I know you're probably going to come back at me being like, well, like everybody knows who LeBron James is because we talked about Space Jam 2 being LeBron James now and now Michael Jordan, which again, Space Jam was actually included in the documentary itself. But just to learn from Michael Jordan, and I don't know, I felt like MJ revealed a little bit more of his mentality. Like, LeBron James, at least the one thing I can critique him about is the fact of how wishy-washy he is with his own sense of focus and his own style of play. Like, I remember in some interviews, like, we're totally focused. We're going to go on to the next game. We're going to win. And then other times he's like, nah, I don't know. Maybe. But MJ, spot on every single time. MJ did not, every single interview he was on, and every single interview he didn't want to say, it was yes, no, maybe, whatever your question was, because he was totally listening to his music on his headphones. So I just think I would rather prefer playing with Michael Jordan than the other 23 now, which is LeBron James.
So I'm going to go with LeBron.
Okay.
So my reasoning is
Taco Tuesday. No,
that's the reason. That's 1B. My 1A reason. So when LeBron has the ball, so LeBron's basically the point guard of the team. That's going to be said. Michael's more of a 2. But the beauty of LeBron's game is that he'll be dribbling the ball up the floor, and he's looking to find a mismatch in the court. So he'll see, if I'm like the 3, so if I'm the small forward and he sees I have a mismatch, he's going to call a play, not necessarily for him, but he's going to call a play to get the best shot in the best scenario. Also, LeBron is probably a better passer than Jordan. I think we can both agree with that. He's obviously got more assists than Jordan. So if LeBron goes to drive, if I'm a guy, I can learn when LeBron does this, I need to position myself here. If he goes to drive, maybe he'll kick it out into the corner. I have to be in that corner. With MJ, I feel like what MJ's going to do. He's not a big passer. With LeBron, I feel like you'd have a little more opportunity to show your clutchness and to maybe become a better overall player with LeBron than MJ.
I feel like if we're boggling down to the last 5 seconds of the game and you want to put the ball in somebody's hands, it's got to be MJ. I know LeBron James has certainly made his clutch shots during his career, but certainly for him, as far as the wear and tear that he has gone through, as far as some of the games he's played, again, if you put LeBron James with the Bad Boy Pistons, I think he would literally complain to the refs, and he'd be like, "Why isn't this called? Why isn't this called?" Like, I don't think, like, I am that person to say that LeBron James wouldn't survive Jordan's era of play as far as the amount of fouling and the amount of physicality that was going on during those years.
I think if he grew up in the era, I think he would have adapted to it better. I just feel that as a teammate of LeBron, you're going to have more opportunity to be a star than you would as a teammate with Jordan. Because look at the fact that we just talked about. Scottie Pippen played with Jordan the whole time Jordan was at the Pippins, and he doesn't get the respect he deserves. But if you look at the guys that play with LeBron, I feel like Kyrie Irving gets a little bit more respect than he should because of what he did in the finals. Because Kyrie's been a basket case the last few years. Obviously, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh. I mean, no one really paid attention to Chris Bosh while he was in Toronto. And when he came to Miami, he became a star. So I think if I'm someone that wants to have a little bit more fame and have a chance to be a little bit more successful in my personal career, like based on my achievements and my stats, I'd rather pick LeBron than MJ.
No, I totally can respect that decision, and I think it's just more so. I guess we'll have to see when LeBron James's documentary comes out of when he can win back-to-back-to-back champions. Because I don't know, man. I think it goes with those rings and it goes with those MVP trophies. And, I think if we're really looking at it this way, it's the same as when the Golden State Warriors were beating the Chicago Bulls in their season of play with their how many wins and how many losses they played. They beat the Bulls, but they did not win a championship. And I think that completely erases the whole entire season as a whole, because you had the best record in the league, but yet you didn't win the championship. And I think that really is just, I think that's a tipping point for me. So
absolutely. I think it also depends on what type of player you are. If you're a guy that likes to have the ball in your hand a lot, you don't really want to play with LeBron. You're going to want to play with MJ. If you don't care, if you want to be a spot-up shooter, then you're going to play with LeBron, because he's going to pass it out to the outlets more.
Certainly. So, yeah, all of our sports fans, I know if you certainly watched the Last Dance documentary, I think you'll participate in this edition of Take It. We'll have it, of course, the next day at 11 a.m. on all of our social medias. Until next time, Matt, believe it or not, this is the episode that I can finally say it. We made it on Apple Podcasts. So, dabs all around, DABS, not the drug, the motion of your hands. So
it's an anti-drug podcast.
This is an anti-drug podcast. But if you are listening on Apple Podcasts, thank you. If you aren't, and that's your preferred method, please feel free to do. Also, leave us 5 stars and make sure to leave a review. That just helps us get the podcast out a little bit more to people that may not be listening currently. To those who are listening on Spotify, thank you so much for listening on Spotify. I think Matt and I are getting the hang of not only doing the podcast, but understanding our audience a little bit. So we certainly see a lot of love from our Spotify listeners. So we're not going to be like Joe Rogan and completely rogue and going exclusively to Spotify just yet. Unless Spotify throws a little cash at our way, then that's
wouldn't be a bad thing.
Wouldn't be a bad thing. But until next time, guys, we will see you next week in our next edition of the Funny Business Podcast.
Stay safe, everyone.
I still can't believe I've spent 6,000 plus on Moe's.
That's crazy.
Crazy.
That's nuts.